Hey, Christopher here, and I am talking about the groups instructional strategy, specifically small groups. Let's jump in. So, small group are about interacting and making it possible to take careful note of students' learning behaviors, strengths, and academic gaps. In a spiritual context, we also know that we understand their spiritual, emotional, or psychological state of being because we're developing a long term relationship with them, and we're going to help to curate the environment and ultimately carve out character in their lives through a small group context. Now, from a biblical perspective, Mark 6:39 says that he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. To be fair, he's talking about 50s and hundreds, but when you are a large group of tens of thousands of folks gathering at an event with Jesus, breaking up into 50 and hundreds, that is a small group. But we do see plenty of other examples where the disciples were meeting, praying, and doing other activities in smaller contexts. And the group of disciples that Jesus met with would be the perfect example because we see that he meets with a small group to entrust ultimately the Great Commission to go the distance by making disciples who make disciples. And obviously, small groups do that. So let's talk about some of the reasons why. It's a great opportunity to follow up from a lecture or a message on Sunday morning, especially if your small groups are going to meet during the week. Now, in these small group contexts, unlike a large group session where you're just listening and being talked to, you can really work things out with discussions or group activities. So people often can learn more by what they do in those small groups. It's also a chance to reiterate, repeat, or reinforce information that they may have learned through a book or some other session or some other learning mechanism. What's nice is they can be long term. So because of that, things can be chunked and there can be a gradual knowledge acquisition. What's also nice about small groups, they're very versatile. They can be specialized. They can be about healing or dealing with divorce or dealing with being single and really have a small or long shelf life depending on your need for them. What's nice about small groups as well is that you can develop relationships. Obviously, sitting next to people is good, but sitting next to people and sharing ideas and conversations and talking about life and praying for each other, and especially in a small group context, there's just something special that happens there. The big thing about them is they're a safe space. They are not a public forum. They allow for more intimate conversations, things to be shared without judgment, so that way we can develop ideas and it's a place for us to test the waters and see if what we feel or what we think is accurate and help to get coached and mentored without feeling like there are a bunch of eyes watching us in the process. When you're building your small groups, you have to consider whether or not they're going to be closed versus open. Open groups are primarily intended for members to join at any time. Now, the nice thing about that is the group membership is constantly changing. What's bad about that is it's less stable and predictable because you don't know who's going to show up and what state of being or what mood they're in or even what their spiritual temperature is at. Now, what's nice about these open groups is that they have a variety of membership. But what's bad is, potentially that, as people gravitate towards personalities or backgrounds that are more like them or like-minded, you can develop, some cliques. Now, they are more dynamic and often more creative because they're appealing to a broader audience. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. You're trying to see what sticks with your group. So potentially, it's very hard to balance some immediate needs. You'll get those folks who want this really deep Bible study, but you also have some new believers that are showing up or just showing up to that particular small group. So it's hard to please everyone in them. Now, closed groups here are those where all of the members begin at the same time. I want to add a caveat to this that this also could involve some level of confidentiality and privacy. So let's keep that in mind that closed groups could reflect that nature as well. They are consistent and predictable, but they can also lack range and variety because they are so similar every single time that they can be a little mundane. They are more cohesive because of their consistency, but they can also lead to groupthink or group conformity because everyone starts to talk alike and think alike. They start to give the same answers. And so there stops being the level of innovative conversation and dynamic conversation because everyone is kind of on the same page. And that means we're all going to start saying the same things. They are easier developing intimacy or closeness with others, but they are less able to deal with change. That's very true because as you begin to like the set of people that you're with, you don't want them to go anywhere. So that can be a little bit tough, and it's hard to sort of break out of that and start to diversify things a little bit. Let's talk about some good practices here. I want to be clear when I say good practices. What we're saying here is, of course, we always think best. Problem with that is that best is a moving target. Often when curriculum is written or methodologies are written, they're written a certain time period where socio social behavior is going to change over time, and how our culture changes. So we say good because it's a moving target and we might want to innovate. And as our group changes, we might want to change our practices to reflect the size of the nature and the maturity of our group. So just keep that in mind when we're starting to describe good practices here. Now, if a student understands what small group time is going to look like and sound like, they're going to be more successful. They want to know what to expect. That's adults and that's students and that's children. They all want to know that things are going to be a certain way. This guarantees consistency. They know what to expect and they know what to look forward to. So we have to talk about time frame. When is it going to meet? And we need to make sure we're being very respectful at time. Start on time, end on time. Make sure you respect the time. You have to also say what to expect. Have a good agenda. Let them know what's going to happen so that way they can, again, look forward to it and know that there's not going to be things throwing them into chaos. We often don't know the condition of folks' home life and what's going on in their life. So we want some level of consistency and solidarity in our groups. We also have to talk about noise level and how to move around. If you've ever watched anyone in a small group or even a large group or just people in general, if there is a distraction going off into the side, they are like a flock of seagulls. Their attention span just goes out the window. So we want to make sure that we are very clear with the group and set the expectation on when to talk, how to talk, and when they can move around or how to go about doing this. These little behaviors of being subtle and not, walking across the room or walking in front of everyone to go to the bathroom, those things are not necessarily conducive to focus. So setting those expectations are really important. Also knowing how to interrupt or when to talk or even when to contribute. Totems are great for this. So having some kind of an object, maybe some block with green and red painted on either side of it. Green when you're ready to talk, red when you're not. This lets the facilitator know that someone has a question. You can pass the totem around and saying, hey, I've got green on, I'm ready to talk. Or give everyone a totem and they can just flip it up and that's how they're going to do their discussion time. So totems are great, and this will help solve problems in the future. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Another big thing here is post procedures, getting everyone involved, giving people agency and independent responsibility. So if you've got a certain pattern to the way you're doing your small groups, for example, when I would do small groups at my church context, I had a countdown playing 15 minutes before with music playing lightly in the background. At 9 o'clock sharp, I had a roll in for Sunday school that would play. I would get up, or I'd have a student get up and do announcements. We'd do that. It'd take about 5 minutes. I'd do a prayer for everyone, and then we'd split off into our different groups, which they would then do more prayer requests, where they would go around the room and take more specific prayer requests. Other students would pray across the room for each other, and then they do the lesson where there's usually some kind of reading. They would read 2 verses each, and we go around the circle so that everyone got a chance to read. Everyone got involved if they felt comfortable reading. And these were just the things that we did. And so we just wrote these out. And this is just what a pattern looked like for our smart group. And we assigned responsibility by getting other people to pray, getting other people to read the questions for us, right? And so these are things that we sort of help. And ultimately, as a facilitator, we have to model this. We have to delegate. We have to participate. We have to answer questions because they're going to see what we do, not just what we say. So participant practice procedure here is what we call this. It gives the participant practice with these procedures, and this becomes the normalization of that type of environment, and also develops future small group leaders because they now know the routine, they can facilitate the routine, and they feel comfortable and confident. Another big thing is grouping, organized by gender and grade. Ensure friends and new members mingle. Make sure that folks are getting to know each other, especially strangers or new folks. Pair confident students and help others who are struggling. Make sure that you're putting those and strategically getting folks in certain groups to make sure there's a balance there. And geographic region, especially with small groups that don't physically meet at the church. Geographic region is a great way to sort of find a member affinity to another group, right? So that they can get involved with folks of a similar area or background. Understanding our role as a facilitator. It's not all about talking. In fact, there's a whole book that's called Talking Ain't Training. It's very important that you start a discussion. You facilitate an active learning environment where they get to be the centerpiece, student-centered learning, where they are at the forefront of everything that's going on. Don't constantly interject or overrule their idea or add one more thing. That's taking away. It's reductive. It's taking away from their idea. So affirm, celebrate, congratulate, say, that's awesome, exactly. Affirm, affirm, affirm. Another big thing here, step back into that listening role, right? Just respond and move it forward. Be okay with silence sometimes. You're going to ask questions and they're not going to know. So you got to provide prompts to keep the discussion going and keeping it positive. Sometimes it means reorienting it from a tangent or a rabbit hole and really getting it back on track. Also, make sure that they can apply these concepts practically. Always be looking for ways to help them take it home, so to speak. And be careful of the clock and look at your timing to make sure that you're wrapping up so that you're not having to be abrupt, especially if you got church service right after, or they need to catch a ride with their parents, or they have other responsibilities, like maybe they got to go to work after the small group. So make sure you're respecting that time. You've got a good agenda here, you're student centered, and you're drawing it to a close in a natural way and not abrupt. Now, assessments are really important. They're really about helping you understand where your learners are at, where your participants are at. Student accountability is part of it. That way, they are responsible to really zoom in and tune in to what's going on. This is a way for you to assess knowledge and adjust content delivery based on those assessment results. A couple examples here would be cold calling and group discussion. Basically, after a group discussion, ask specific students, "Hey, what did you think about that?" Or "What did you learn?" Or "What thing you thought you was cool?" Or "What was one idea you took away from this?" Also, having folks write a summary, right? So quietly writing a summary can help them reiterate what they learned about that content. Big thing is promoting discussion. Great example of this would be give a topic, get groups and subgroups, 2 to 4, right, based on your size. Get 15 minutes to talk about it and get a small, idea ready to present. Give 5 minutes per group to present their idea, and then 10 to 15 minutes for each group to kind of argue their point or affirm other people or say, hey, what do you agree or disagree? What's roses, buds, and thorns? What's something that you felt like worked really well? Rose. What's a bud? It needs development. And what's thorns? That's not really a good idea. Maybe you can chunk that. These, by nature, are assessments, and they get your students engaged into an active learning environment where they're student-centered, participant-centered, and this is really an environment you want to create consistently. So group discussions are always really good. You're going to run into problems. You're going to have dominant personalities. So, when you have that problem, totems are really great because it basically says who can and can't talk, and they have to flip it. And you need to call on them. So affirm their answer, celebrate it, but also don't be afraid to redirect. Say, I love your answer, Bobby. Jane, what did you think about that? And call on others. What happens when no one talks? Well, again, be comfortable with silence. Rephrase the question. Ask it a different way or a different question maybe to move things on. But ask students what they think about it, or how do they feel about it. Feeling is a really important word to use because they don't always know what they think because they're not confident in their thoughts, but they know how they feel. So learning to rephrase your question can often be a prompt, and you can, call on students directly, but be careful here because not everyone feels comfortable being called on the spot, and you don't want to discourage folks or make them feel like, they're going to be hijacked or picked on when they're not prepared. Remember, you have a cognitive bias. Remember, you have the curse of knowledge. You know where this lesson is going. But a lot of folks need time to think and process. Be fair and give them time to think. Again, curse of knowledge means you know and assume that they know. Bias means you're thinking about it from your context, and empathy says we got to think about it from their context. So keep that in mind when no one's talking, and take a moment, think of a different question, rephrase it. And sometimes you just say, well, maybe that's not a good question. Let's go on to another one. Don't be afraid to move on. Don't be stubborn to say, we got to answer this question. No, it's just, move on. Keep it fluid. Big thing is distractions. Make sure that you're using activities and games to bring everyone back into focus. They're going to happen. You're going to have someone interrupt your group. You're going to have someone pass by. You're going to have a loud noise. You just need to say, be kind. Don't be impatient. They need your patience, and understand that people are people. They're going to get distracted. It's always okay to be firm, but do it in an unemotional way. Be matter of fact when you're refocusing folks, not aggressive. Attitude is not going to help you, right? Authority, not going to help you. You have to be a human being, understanding what another human being needs to get back on track. Anyway, that's my content here for small group instructional strategy. It was a pleasure getting to share. Hopefully some of this stuff was informative. I know I spoke really fast, but I had a lot to talk about in 15 minutes. So it was great getting to ECU. I wish I was there in class, and hopefully I'll be able to see you in person someday. Um, best of luck to all the other presenters, and I hope everyone's doing a great job in their presentations. Y'all have a great day.